Hey everyone, welcome to Garage Topics. Today is another episode of the Toyota Tacoma frame restoration, pretty much getting rid of all the rust. As you saw in the other episode, the issues that arose, this is a huge project, and a lot of times I ran into an episode where that was going to be the day I was going to really tack everything up, put all the welding pieces back in, but some issue arose and I needed another part or something didn't fit, I needed more time, etc. That's pretty much how it is with every project, so take that into consideration with your timing of projects. This episode today is going to go slightly in depth with the leaf spring portion and why that was such a pain for me. I'll show you how I made it easy. My neighbors helped me out and with some really cool tools that you can make yourself, so it's going to be awesome to see. And then also, finally, all the welding that was involved with the frame restoration. And today, you'll be able to see this truck back in its glory, how it should be. So stay tuned. We got a lot of new parts that I thought we didn't have to buy, but kept finding that the old stuff was too bad to reuse, so it's taken a little while, but I think that's the easiest way, just to buy everything new. Don't try and resalvage anything because it's going to take you too much time and too much effort. So I want to show you what my garage looks like, which is crazy. It's a mess, I can't stand it. I'll show you the truck and I'll show you some new parts before we get to welding. My bench is cleaner than average, which doesn't say much about that, but this garage is just straight trashy. You put junk everywhere. Some of it's my fault. I got my crummy jeans that I've been wearing when grinding because I don't want to get my skin burnt from things. Those are the leaf springs. The bottom side's painted. I just got to finish clearing out the insides of here on one of these. So making sure that all of the old rubber and metal in there is straight. Right, see the bed sitting right there. You got the cap back there. You got the sandbox that's sitting there. I've been lucky enough to borrow my neighbor's air compressor because mine's not big enough for the job, so that's been right in here. So there's basically been no room at all. So I'll be happy to get this done. But let's go over some new parts that I've got. Alright, so let's go over some parts here. So first things first are these new caps that are going to go in place for where the majority of the rust was. And that's where the majority of the rust comes in with these Tacomas. It just sits. Thankfully these guys are smart enough to put holes in the bottom. These are called safety caps. These are done by Rust Solutions. They're a great product. I think they match up perfectly once I got all my kinks out of the frame as far as cutting the little divots that didn't let this press up, but it's so close to a match that you just hammer it in. It kind of sits by itself. I'll clamp it to make sure, but this would be great. It's about 1/8 inch metal, and I definitely think it's worth the money as far as me trying to fab something up, especially in the structural point there. So I got two of these, one per side. Secondary pieces, I tried to reuse the old hangers that held the springs on, and they're just beyond rusty, and I don't feel like digging with them, to be honest. And that and the mounting spot, I could carve and get a good position, but it's made for the width of the original frame, which isn't going to work. So I decided to get something a little bit more beefy and not as rusty to make sure that the weld was going to be very structural. So to take care of that, went with a company called Low Range Off-Road. They sell these. These are beefy. These are 1/4 inch spring perch hangers, and what it does is it has this little lip here to make sure you line it up perfectly on the frame. So this should go good. My weld is going to be pushing its limits to weld this, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to attempt to bench weld this. So weld this to the cap while it's here so I can see in the inside to make sure it's got enough penetration to make sure that it's structural. But I got two of these, got some stickers, so that's good. Got a ton of bushings and bolts, which I needed, so let's go over them. These are greasable bolts. Has the loop, honestly, for the bushings that go into the springs, but then on the ends of the bolts has a greasable point so that we're not going to have these weld into place ever again. So if I want to upgrade the springs or anything down the road, it'll be easy to take off. It's made by Daystar. Alright, second product out of this box. I got some U-bolts that's going to match up because I cut the old ones off because they were seized beyond anything, and that and they're 14 years old, so they were like 30 bucks. Just go ahead and replace them, make your life easy. I got the bushings for the rear of the truck, so got a ton of bushings here. These are old Man Emu, which are a great brand out of the homeland, Australia. Got your new Shackle mounts themselves, which are high quality, and then we've also got some Also got some greasable bolts too. So again, these bolts are going to be all brand new. Everything's going to be brand new and structural. And so if I ever want to upgrade the suspension, I can. But it's just nice knowing that you got a clean slate based on the rusty condition that it was in before. So got a ton of parts, ton of stickers. I'm looking forward to putting it on right now. Last but not least, I want to make sure that all the rust that might be there, as far as like surface rust or in all the new products, I want to make sure that they're coated perfectly. So I went with Eastwood paint. They're known for their rust solutions. So I got a ton of rust encapsulator. I've got about 3 cans of this, making sure that it's all good to go. It's a big, it's 15 ounces, so it's pretty big, and it's, from what I've seen, it's a lot better quality than what I've seen from paint from auto stores. It goes on a lot thicker too. Got that. Got some rubberized rust encapsulator. I was hoping that they, if I did see any rust underneath the bed or the cab, I'd just hit it with this. There's almost no rust at all on the body of the cab, which is surprising considering how rusty the frame is. But anyways, I'm gonna hit this up with it. It's a protecting, and it'll sound dead soon. And then for the internal frame, where I can't get to for right now, they've got this kit that's called internal frame coating, and what it is, it's like a 2-foot hose that comes off the aerosol, and you're able to feed that through the frame, and it sprays out like a fan. I got green because it was on sale, and 2, I can see exactly what's being covered and what hasn't been covered. So this is going to be good to make sure that this frame is going to be good for years to come. All right, that's enough blathering about parts. Let's go do some work.
My goal for that weekend was to fully weld in everything, but these leaf springs honestly were the toughest part of the job. It was unbearably bad. Ended up burning out the old bushings, having a miserable time getting everything out of there. Spent forever trying to get these bushings in place, but couldn't do it myself. Thank God for my neighbors. They were a huge help, and I couldn't have done it without them. So I want to show you the tips that I learned from them. If I could go back, I would recommend you just getting new leaf springs. They're pricey, but it would save you a lot of time.
This simple contraption that we devised saved me hours. It's a press that we made with some thread and the old ends from the old mounts for the leaf springs. And what this is doing is pushing in our bushings perfectly, because they are extremely tight. So you got thread, got 2 spanners, put it in. It's perfectly pressing it in. I had to bevel some of the start of the bushing just to get a head start to go in perfectly. But once you get it in with the grease, it pops right in. This all thread just has a nut and a washer on each end, and when we use the old hanger pieces for the leaf spring as a bigger washer. Pop that through, put it through the holes of the bushing, pop this one on top, top the washer, and then away you go with whatever size nut you use. Just compress it and it evenly pushes it down. Let me show you another jig that we made to press the sleeves in. So this is a homemade press that actually worked perfectly. It's just 2x4s. And this here is the bottle jack out of the Toyota. It's bolted up top. And what we use this for is there's a metal collar sleeve that you have to push through the bushing. So we put the whole leaf spring in here. It's helpful to have 2 people because it's heavy. But we put the leaf spring in there with the bushings in it, and then we have to press the sleeve down in through the bushing. But this thing worked perfectly. So if you're in the Jiffy, get some 2x4s and use the bottle jack. The bottle jack in the Tacoma has 4 screw holes on it on each side, so it's perfect. It's like they knew we were going to do this, but definitely recommend this if you're in paint and don't have one.
I can't get over the fact how much easier this tool made the job. There's no way that you can bang this in with a hammer because the rubber of the new bushing just absorbs all of the impact. This press worked like a charm, and it was like it was made for this Toyota. It had the screw holes in the jack for you to mount it up to some 2x4s. I thought the whole thing was going to break, but wasn't too much pressure that was needed, just needed consistent pressure, and this did an awesome job of pressing it in. So I spent that whole weekend trying to get these leaf spring bushings in, so it wasn't until the next week I was able to weld.
Alright, I spent a ton of time yesterday mocking this all up on the frame, making sure the exact same spot for reference. I put masking tape down, I'll paint this tape to know exactly where we're going to weld at. And I'm about to go weld this up with my buddy Chandler. He's a professional welder, and we're going to get some stuff done. Got these up, they're going to mount right up here. We'll be good to go. Oh yeah, big time right here. Power Make 300, baby.
These welds looked awesome, and Chandler did a fantastic job. We knew for a fact that these were 100% structural since we could see on the inside. So now that we're done at the shop, we drove back to the house in his sick FRS. So we got those welds done. I took that in the cap and put it back in the frame and spent another day making sure that my measurements were spot on, and then we're ready to weld. This piece here was just an extra bracing that I made from cutting out of rust. At this point, everything had been seam welded up. I got the leaf springs in, loosely mucked it up, and everything lined up. I was super happy that all that hard work had paid off. And what you're about to see here is the very first time that the wheels had touched the ground with this new welds, new suspension, everything. So this is a big moment. I was pretty excited, but pretty petrified at the same time, because we'd spent this whole time with this thing up in the air.
That was uneventful. It works though.
We were waiting for something to pop off.
I decided to cut out any rust that I could find since I had the gas tank out, but it rained every single day in May. It was impossible to work on it, so I had to put a top up. This here is a piece that I made for the lower section of the frame. Felt comfortable doing it myself. It wasn't truly a structural piece, but more so cutting out rust. I was pretty happy that it came out, how it came out. It was just some angle line I picked up. It's about an 1/8 inch thick, and I put it in place, and it seemed to work just fine.
Alright, you can see that the truck now is back in its shape. The weather's here has just been absolutely miserable. I've kind of been working in the rain, so it's been really tough to shoot the video footage, but everything's painted now, and I filled up any little gaps. So the cap here was fine, it did its job just perfectly, but I had to cut out a little bit more rust than anticipated. So for example, here there's a little gap, so I made some filler plates and did some welds in there. And additionally, the cap was exactly what I needed to fix, but I found a little bit more rust. The top again was solid, but I made a new bottom section for the whole side. The top totally fine. It was structural with that bottom piece cut out, but there was rust that's sitting on the bottom of it, so I just cut it all out. So now there's virtually almost no rust on this truck at all, which is great because now I know it's going to last a long time. I was very fortunate and everything lined up perfectly as it should with the leaf springs. There's a pin in the leaf spring that sits in the axle. Then you have to mock this up inside of this piece here, which went fine, and then make it line up back here. It was a little bit of a juggling act, but it ended up working out fine. I was worried about the U-bolts because when I originally put them into this bottom bracket here, it didn't fit. So what I ended up doing is I got a clamp and clamped them together so that it would compress them in to go through the hole. And that's exactly what you need to do because it's so, when you tighten it up, it gets into that perfect form, but initially it's like a 1/4 inch too wide for the holes. So if you're trying to put U-bolts in, you just might need to get some press on it to put it through the holes in this mount to bolt it up. From what I've read online, I'm doing the bottom torques to 90. I did this one here on the leaf spring itself to 90, and this one here 60. The only issue I've had is these lock washers on the bolts, like all but one of them, like underneath the pressure, like bent and cracked. So I'm gonna have to replace those washer bits, but there's the other one, and then that's the only one that survived. So I'm gonna go replace those washers. Got the shocks in just fine. The gas tank's in, drove it around. It drives straight, which is fantastic.
The first video I mentioned I was going to replace this brace for the gas tank, but I just ended up plating it because the dealership wanted over 300 bucks for it. The only thing I have to do right now is I'm going to maybe just touch up some more paint bits here and there, but the truck bed itself is ready to go back on. You can see the side here was the same bit. Replacing all that on the bottom. And what I did for reference is, I think I mentioned this before, but from here to the cab is what I measured as my reference point, since I didn't have any starting reference point, and it all lined up perfectly straight. So we're good to go. And like all on here is all solid now. And I also sprayed some rubberized paint underneath here, just to make sure that the cap itself of the cab, if you will, is not going to rust through at all. So lots of grinding and such, but lots of paint now, and what you see here is just the remnants of where rust might have started, but it's all shut down from now. It'll last a long time. These are really beefy 1/4 inch leaf spring mounts. I was worried that this thing made it too offset, but it ended up being perfect. That there is perfectly there for a reason. That gap in there to perfectly align this outward, because at the back here that mount comes out a little bit. I don't know if you can see it in the frame, but it slightly goes in to the left and then comes out to the right some to make it all lined up perfectly. But yeah, it's in a lot better shape than what we started off with. I haven't cut out any signs of rust back here underneath the rainy tarp, but I just got some angle line and made some custom fab work myself.
And should last a long time now. Throughout this whole experience, the only 2 bolts that I had that snapped was the bolt for the filler neck and the bolt for the strap on the bolt for the strap on the tank. And I was really worried I couldn't get a drill in there. What I ended up doing was using an air chisel, because they had welded nuts on there, and the bolt itself snapped below here, and with literally 10 seconds of the air impact, it snapped off the old welded nut, which made my life 1,000 times easier for that one and for that one as well. There was a nut up top. But that's a pro tip right there. Get a chisel help you out. As I mentioned before, the restoration of this truck and getting the frame back into shape is the biggest project that I've ever tackled. At some points I was like, what am I getting myself into? Because this is a lot of riding on this. The structure of the frame was in question. making sure that the truck went straight down the road was in question, and making sure that it was going to last was in question too. Wanted to not do a shutty job, make sure that while we're in there, replace as much as possible to make it as close to new as possible. So I've been driving the truck lately. It's probably due for me to re-torque everything down, but I'm happy to announce it goes straight. It rides actually a lot better than it did before because the leaf springs weren't even before because of the rust. And it's good to go. I've had no issues with it whatsoever. So less blabbering, I'll show you what it looks like now. Right. Pop this open.
There she is. After all that hard work, it's finally nice to see this actually back in shape and back together again. The only things I've really done, I put the cap back on, but I put a little bit of foam in between there to make a weather seal. But she rides good, and now that I've confirmed that it works well and drives well, I can start tinkering with it a little bit more. I'll do some of the cosmetics because it's a little bit faded from the sun, needs a little bit of paint here and there, but all was good. I took it upon myself to spray everywhere in the frame. You can see it in there, back behind that tire there. There you go. I'll probably do a better job once I take the wheels off and stuff. So here's the new frame bit, as I mentioned before. It's staying sturdy. There's holes in there. I used that Eastwood rust encapsulator paint with the tube on it. I put it on the grass because I heard that paint is really crazy, but that seemed to work well. I'm going to drill a couple more holes in the bottom to make sure that when rust and mud sits in here, it can drain well, but it's good. Looking in the back of the truck. All back in here. Everything's looking nice and new. It's in a lot better shape now. Got those greasable shackle, greasable bushing bits. Everything's all nice and tidy now. The only thing rusty on this truck now is that muffler, which I'm going to replace because I think it's starting to go. I can hear a little bit of a pin leak. But everything down here is in really good shape now. I'm really impressed how it turned out. And I'm also pretty happy too that it actually works and goes down the street fine. They had it. I did not, you can see I did not paint the gas tank skid plate yet. I'm going to do it, I just ran out of time. I don't know if you can see inside, there might be some rims in there. That sounds like a next episode to me. But overall, she's good to go. And the last thing we need to do for this entire project is there's stickers that I got. You know we gotta put those on, right?
Alright, so clean this off previously. Stick it on. There's 10 horsepower. That's another 10 to make it a total of 20 horsepower added. See, I'm sweating. It's like 90 something and it's super high humidity. I'm wearing a black shirt like a mofo. Alright, this project's done. Thanks a lot for watching. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out and have a good one. What once started as a pretty shitty situation of getting a truck that was not structural at all. As you can see here, this is when I first got it. This thing was super rusty, but I couldn't tell because the previous owner had covered it up with Bondo and housing putty. As you'll see here, it wasn't until I got it home that I really found out that this frame was basically complete junk. It was just not a good situation at all. This is pretty crappy, but after all, we put in the hard work and made this crappy frame into this awesome frame, and I'm very happy that aftermarket parts exist, such as safety caps, and now it's super duper club dirty fresh.